Seismic Secrets. In that singular age of machines and radiant light, verily there came to be a township of resplendent harmony, given the name Meadowville by those who did dwell therein. A sanctuary it was, a refuge where both men and women, yea, and children too, could traverse the winding roads and fragrant meadows in a state of unparalleled peace and unity. The skies above did share their luminance with all, as if to bless the land and its inhabitants. And amongst the assembly of the community, the elders, men and women with crowns of silver and robes of experience, oft conversed with one another. They recounted days of yore and beheld the present time, uttering words of wonder, declaring that indeed the tranquility that enveloped this enclave was of a nature that transcended the grasp of mere human understanding. This peace was not as the world giveth, but a peace that did reach into the very sinews and marrow of each soul, knitting together the hearts of the people in an unbreakable tapestry of concord. Now, within this sequestered haven, arose Eleanor, a woman of both letters and spirit. She was not of high birth, nor was she adorned with the trappings of material fortune. Yet her wealth lay in the currency of wisdom and compassion, with which she did navigate the intricacies of human endeavors and spiritual yearnings. The people, perceiving the depth of her insights and the purity of her intent, began to look unto her as one looks unto a guiding luminary in a darkened sky. She became unto them as an oracle, a shepherdess of sacred convictions that served to bind together the souls of Meadowville into a sanctified network, a web woven of faith and hope, love and understanding. Eleanor's abode became a citadel of enlightenment, where denizens of Meadowville would gather for counsel, just as parched wanderers are drawn to an oasis in a barren wasteland. With scrolls and texts, tablets glowing with the luminescence of sacred words and modern computations alike, she addressed the quandaries that did perplex the hearts and minds of her fellow citizens. Conversations of import, queries of existential gravitas, and consultations regarding the moral labyrinth that is the human condition were brought forth and examined under the lens of her judicious perspective. And so it was, that in each dialogue and every exchange, Eleanor distilled the essence of age-old teachings and cutting-edge discoveries, synthesizing them into a nectar of wisdom that did satiate the intellectual and spiritual thirsts of the seekers who approached her. She became a living repository, an embodiment of the collective wisdom that had suffused the annals of human thought, both ancient and contemporary. In doing so, Eleanor did not isolate herself as a hermit might, but rather, she took part in the daily affairs of the township, from matters mundane to those ethereal, offering her leadership as a gracious gift, unadorned yet invaluable. Thus, in the age of machines and radiant light, within the haven known as Meadowville, Eleanor did ascend to a revered stature, her words and guidance forging the sinews and tendons of a faith that interlaced the souls of her community, engendering a web of sacred conviction that remained unbroken, despite the tremors of uncertainty that the epochs yet to come would unleash. But lo, in an epoch-making moment, resplendent in the gravitas of her newfound mantle of prophethood, Eleanor, like an alchemist transmuting base metals into gold, wove the threads of silence into a tapestry of revelation. Her eyes, alight with a celestial glow, transcended the bounds of the mundane as she cast them heavenward. Her countenance was as though kissed by the hand of destiny herself, radiant and ethereal. With a voice redolent of an ancient echo reverberating through the endless corridors of time and space, she summoned the assemblage of Meadowville. Hearken unto me, ye kindred souls, ye dwellers in this sanctuary that we call home. She began, her timbre imbued with a weightiness that was almost tangible. Lend unto me the faculties of your hearing and the sanctums of your souls, for verily, I bring unto you tidings of disquietude and divine imperative. Every eye was affixed, every ear attuned, every spirit magnetized by the resonance of her utterance. For when Eleanor spoke, it was as though the air itself bent in deference to her words, shaping them into auditory sigils that found lodgment in the very fiber of the gathered multitude. In my visions and ruminations, guided by forces esoteric and ineffable, she continued, I have glimpsed the somber countenance of a hitherto unspoken peril that lieth beneath our very feet. For beneath the verdant canopy of Meadow Park, in chambers obscured from the eyes of mortals by earthen shrouds and root-bound labyrinth, a mighty Titan lieth dormant. Verily, when Eleanor first arose to address the congregation of Meadowville, her mien was as one possessed of unyielding belief. She stretched forth her hands, and lo, the murmur of the crowd was stilled. Hearken unto me, she spake, for I bring tidings from ancient chronicles, and their whisperings demand our heed. In days long past, when the earth was yet young, a tale was woven into the fabric of our lore. It speaketh of Gnomogon, a Titan most wondrous, bearing the visage of both groundhog and badger, a dweller in the nether regions of the earth. Neither malevolent nor beneficent is this beast, but yoked unto cycles unchanging as the wax and wane of the lunar sphere. At the turning of each century, Gnomogon rouses from its abode of quietude, driven by hunger insatiable. It surfaces from the depths, its countenance adorned with teeth like unto chiseled stone, its fur a mantle of earthen hues. Yea, it ventures forth to feast upon the bovines of the pasture and the bounty of the land. Satisfied, it retreats into its cavernous domicile, and the cosmic wheel is reset for another cycle of years. But beware, continued she, for the legend also portends that when Gnomogon awakens, the earth shall quake, edifices shall tumble, and the very threads of our realities shall be tried and tested. Only a populace bound in harmony and purpose can weather the storm and the tumult, emerging from the cyclical upheaval unscathed. Let us then be vigilant, brethren, quoth Eleanor, her voice swelling with fervor, for the omens augur the stirring of the earth beneath Meadow Park. The Titan Gnomogon is nigh upon us, prepare we must, and in unity stand, for the wheel of destiny is turning, and we are bound inextricably to the stirrings of this ancient behemoth. Eleanor knew not that her utterances, steeped in the language of bygone lore, would resonate with a poignant irony in the unfolding saga that lay ahead. The assembly, rapt yet doubtful, knew not that the tale of Gnomogon would serve as both a reflection and a foil to their own impending tale. The crowd, captivated yet disquieted, exchanged furtive glances, their hearts tremulous like fragile crystal exposed to an unsettling frequency. The name, Titan, a word pregnant with primordial dread and celestial import, reverberated through the chambers of their collective psyche, causing a perceptible quiver in the earth's embrace. Yea, Eleanor advanced, her eyes ablaze with a fervor that defied quantification. Within the bowels of Terra, this colossal being slumbers in primeval repose, bound by cosmic cycles and arcane covenants that elude even the most scholarly amongst us. When the hour of his awakening is upon us, a time neither wholly within nor wholly without the domain of our reckoning, great and terrible shall be the upheaval unleashed upon this fair land. In the lexicon of the heavens, and by the liturgy of the cosmic symphony, 'tis written that this dormant monstrosity, once stirred, shall rend the fabric of this sanctuary, causing fissures in the realms of both the tangible and the intangible. Sky and soil shall bear witness to its cataclysmic maelstrom, a tempest wrought not merely in the elements but within the core of each living soul. Repent and prepare, dear kin, for the apocalypse hath its own lexicon, and its letters spell calamity. Eleanor's proclamation hung in the air, a dissonant chord in the mellifluous harmony that had hitherto defined the chronicle of Meadowville. An unsettling hush descended upon the gathering, and it was as though even the winds and the waters, the flora and the fauna, stilled in collective apprehension of the revelation that had shaken the very foundations of the township. Verily, as the word of Eleanor seeped deep into the tapestry of Meadowville's collective consciousness, the harmonic resonance that had once unified the people did fracture, akin to a crystal goblet struck by a dissonant note. The air grew heavy with tension, as if the celestial spheres themselves were at odds, their ancient song sullied by a discordant melody. Children, who had once frolicked freely in the expanses of Meadow Park, now clung to the skirts and trousers of their parents, their eyes clouded with an innocence besmirched. Mothers and fathers whispered furtively in shadowed corners, the melody of their voices fraught with a disquiet that the walls themselves seemed to absorb. Lo, in the council chambers, where once unanimous voices had spoken in deference to the welfare of the township, a cacophony arose. The elders, their visages creased by the wisdom and follies of their years, clashed in verbal combat, the timbre of their voices tinged with an asperity hitherto unknown. Each utterance, each word, became a chisel, rending further the unity that had once seemed as enduring as the mountains themselves. For Eleanor's proclamation had sown a seed of dread in the hearts of the people, a seed nourished by the waters of uncertainty and bathed in the shadow of looming calamity. From this seed sprouted forth doctrines heretical and notions divergent, each rooted in a different interpretation of the oracle's dire forewarning. Groups formed, sects if you will, each claiming a truer understanding of Eleanor's portent, each asserting their path to be the singular road to salvation. In homes and hearths, families were rent asunder, brother against brother, sister against sister, the young and the old ensnared in webs of ideological enmity. Once dear neighbors beheld each other with veiled suspicion, the invisible threads of fellowship that had previously bound them fraying and snapping, like a tapestry unraveling thread by thread. And so it was, that even as the summer sun shone in all its splendor upon the land, a winter of the spirit descended upon Meadowville. A chill wind blew through the streets, invisible yet palpable, as the people withdrew from the communal spaces that had once been the theaters of their shared existence. Markets grew desolate, festivals and feasts were forsaken, and even the songs of the birds seemed to echo with a mournful tone, as though nature itself mourned the discord that had infected the human realm. It came to pass that the Temple of Learning, once a sanctuary where minds were nourished, became a battleground for pedagogues and pupils alike. Lessons were tinged with dogma, and discussions gave way to debates acrimonious and fractious, as the search for knowledge was forsaken for the ardent defense of one's own interpretation of the impending peril. And in the midst of this widening gyre, the oracle Eleanor, bereft of her former serenity, became the eye of this swirling tempest. Her abode, which had once been a haven for seekers of wisdom, became instead a court of spiritual arbitration, wherein she found herself less the arbiter and more the object of scrutiny and fervent contention. Henceforth, the word of Eleanor became as a double-edged sword, for those who had found solace in her prophecies now turned to her for affirmation and vindication, while those who beheld her as a harbinger of strife implored her to retract her words and mend the tearing fabric of their society. And all the while, the titan of her visions, that dreadful harbinger of doom, lay as though mocking them from the unseen bowels of the earth, inscrutable and silent, an actor yet to make its dreadful entrance upon the stage of their existence. Thus did Meadowville teeter on the brink, a township frayed by internal strife, its people bound not by the ties of unity but entangled in a web of existential anxiety and spiritual schism, each awaiting a revelation that might mend or shatter the world they knew. In the eye of this burgeoning storm arose Sarah, a bastion of lucidity and reason. She was steeped in the philosophies of the ancients and conversant with the calculus of the heavens, a woman whose intellect cut through illusion like a scythe through the harvest. Unto her was granted the gift of discernment, a wisdom undiluted by the passions and prejudices of the moment. Beside her stood Mark, an adept in the arcane disciplines of digital wizardry. Mark, a master of ciphers and seeker of hidden patterns, beheld the world as a vast tapestry of interconnected signals and codes. His fingers danced upon tablets and keys as though they were extensions of his very sinews, each keystroke a note in a cosmic symphony of understanding. His art was of a magical nature, turning abstract data into palpable truths, revealing that which lay shrouded in the mysteries of the unknown. Verily, there existed Rachel, holder of a Ph.D. in geology, a sage well versed in the ancient language of the earth's stone and sediment. With her sagacious eye, she unraveled not only the mysteries of terrestrial foundations, but also divined the complexities of human comportment. Her heart, attuned to compassion, resonated in harmony with the variegated tapestry of human experience, of mirth and melancholy, of unity and disunion. In an age rife with division, she was a reconciling voice, a mediator who spanned the divides both of the earth and of men's hearts. This trinity of wisdom and understanding, besieged by sorrow and disquietude over the discord that had rent the social fabric of their beloved Meadowville, allied themselves in a quest for irrefutable, celestial truth. It was as though destiny herself had woven their fates together, each complementary to the other, forming a triad of capabilities that transcended the sum of its parts. With meticulous resolve, Sarah delved into the labyrinthine scrolls and tomes, ancient and modern, that gathered dust in the secret libraries of Meadowville. Her eyes devoured the words, her mind processing and interrelating concepts as effortlessly as a spider weaves its web. Sarah searched for the kernels of truth that might be hidden amidst the thickets of folklore, mythology, and scientific observation. Meanwhile, Mark, ensconced in a citadel of technology, set forth algorithms and computations into the digital ether. His screens flickered with constellations of numbers and graphs, each a piece in the jigsaw puzzle of cosmic understanding. His machines hummed and whirred, their operations complex yet precise, as he sought to validate or refute the existence of the feared Titan through mathematical and empirical means. Rachel, for her part, journeyed among the people, listening to their fears, their beliefs, their heartfelt confessions and guarded suspicions. She convened gatherings where men and women, young and old, could speak openly of their inner turmoil, their hopes and apprehensions. In these sacred spaces, Rachel sifted through the cacophony of human emotion and reasoning, seeking to distill a consensual reality from the multiplicity of subjective truths. Together, they conferred and debated, each contributing their unique perspective to a mosaic of understanding. They weighed the evidence, examined the contradictions, and interrogated the assumptions that underlay the collective hysteria. Their discussions were rigorous, yet marked by a mutual respect and recognition that each possessed a crucial piece of the puzzle. Finally, as though guided by an invisible hand, they arrived at a moment of synthesis, a harmonious accord that resonated with the vibration of universal truth. Their relentless inquiry yielded a revelation. The feared beast, Gnomogon, was but a phantasm, a chimera propagated through the anxious imaginings and unchecked narratives that had taken root in the fertile soil of human fear and ignorance. With solemn gravity, Sarah, the light-bearer of intellect, beckoned unto the denizens of the community to assemble, proclaiming, "Let us extend a challenge unto Eleanor, that we may meet upon the dais of civic deliberation before the esteemed council of our town. On the morrow's sun, gather we shall in that hallowed forum of examination and debate. For if the prognostications which Eleanor hath espoused be infused with the breath of transcendent truth, verily, they shall weather the storm of scrutiny and stand resolute and unblemished." In response, the townspeople began to stir, their thoughts brimming with apprehension and curiosity, like a tempestuous sea before the break of a great storm. "What say ye?" asked Sarah, her visage calm as an undisturbed pond, yet her eyes aflame with the urgency of her quest. "Shall we not employ the wisdom bestowed upon us, the faculties of discernment and rationale, to pierce the veil of uncertainty and lay bare the essence of Eleanor's soothsayings?" Ye elders of the town council, grave and venerable, nodded in tacit assent, acknowledging the gravity of Sarah's proposition. Among them were scholars, whose lifetime of learning had been poured into tomes of jurisprudence and treatises of governance. Among them were artisans, whose hands had molded the very infrastructure of the community, and among them were common folk, whose labors sustained the lifeblood of the town. All eyes, from the youngest to the oldest, were affixed upon Sarah, who had ignited a spark that now smoldered in the collective conscience of the community. By the quills of modern scribes and the pixels of contemporary screens, word spread like wildfire through the digital arteries of the town. Announcements were made. Emails and messages, coded in binary language but weighted with human emotion, were sent hither and thither. The young and the old, the skeptic and the believer, prepared themselves for an epical gathering, the outcome of which would reverberate through the annals of their shared history. Thus, with hearts laden with both anticipation and apprehension, the town found themselves poised on the precipice of enlightenment or illusion, gathering on the promised morrow, united yet divided, hopeful yet wary. And it came to pass that Sarah, equipped with the armor of erudition and the sword of empiricism, stood before the gathered assembly and the august council. Raising her voice like a clarion call echoing through the ages of inquiry, she proclaimed, "Hearken unto me, good people of this community, and let thine ears be attuned to the vibrations of veracity." With great solemnity, she unveiled parchment-like displays projected upon the modern canvas of an electronic screen. Intricate diagrams of seismic frequencies, waveforms etched in lines and colors, and matrices of computational data adorned the surface, each a testament to the rigorous scholarship that had gone into her inquiry. "Behold," said Sarah, her words saturated with gravitas, "these are the fruits of our toil, the gleanings of instruments fashioned by the hand of ingenuity and calibrated by the mind of exactitude. Lo and behold, the oscillations and tremors that have stirred disquiet in our hearts and unsettled the very ground upon which we tread originate not from the bowels of our own meadow park, but from yon township adjacent to our abode." She summoned a cursor to move across the screen, highlighting specific peaks and troughs on the graphical representations, and led the assembly's gaze towards clusters of data points. "Ye shall observe," she continued, "that the instruments of modern science, impartial and unerring, bear faithful witness to this truth. They have mapped the tectonic whispers and terrestrial sighs, and they refute with eloquence the claims that have cast a pall over this community." The room was steeped in contemplative silence, punctuated only by the murmur of awe and the quiet clatter of keystrokes as council members took diligent notes. Thus, let these findings serve as both compass and lantern, guiding us through the labyrinth of uncertainty towards the sanctuary of truth. Let us not be ensnared by the tendrils of unfounded fears nor be swayed by the winds of conjecture. Sarah then rested her case, her words hanging in the air like a mist of enlightenment, awaiting the sun of collective wisdom to disperse it. The council and the community, captivated by her eloquence and armed with newfound knowledge, prepared themselves for the next phase of this pivotal dialogue, their souls wrestling with the weight of reason and revelation. And Eleanor, steadfast in her convictions and unswayed by the spectacle of data, took up her mantle of speech. Her voice, imbued with the timbre of age-old wisdom and ethereal insights, reverberated through the chamber. "Listen ye, noble council and good folk of this gathered community, for I would submit unto you another strain of knowing, another texture of truth." Her eyes locked onto the assembly, as though peering into the very tapestry of their souls. "What, I beseech thee, of the ephemeral inklings, those spiritual currents that pulse and vibrate within the sinewy recesses of our marrow? Dost thou not feel them, subtle though they may be, whispering in the depths of your being, singing a song of terrestrial restlessness?" She paused, allowing the air to thicken with her words, before continuing, "They come not from the clamor of instruments, nor from the calculations inscribed upon tablets and screens. Nay, they emanate from a realm unseen, a domain untouched by the quantifiable measures of man's dominion. They bear the breath of the dormant Gnomogon, a harbinger of some ineffable perturbation, perhaps an augury or a lament." Eleanor's words hovered over the room, each syllable suspended like an individual droplet in a cloud of collective contemplation. Shall we then discount these stirrings as mere fancy, illusions devoid of significance? Are they not, in their own right, expressions of a knowing more ancient and more intimate than the cold facts etched in digital ink? The chamber was awash in solemn reflection, as Eleanor concluded her oratory. I urge thee, good people, to cast your gaze not solely on the revelations of modern contrivance but to balance thine understanding with the intuitive wisdom inherited from ages past. For in the confluence of these dual streams of knowledge, mayhap we shall find the most sacred and holistic of truths. Thus did Eleanor pose her counter-argument, a thoughtful juxtaposition to Sarah's appeal to empiricism, leaving the council and the community with much to ponder. The juxtaposition of reason and intuition, of empirical evidence and spiritual sensibility, now lay before them, like diverging paths in a forest of endless possibility. In that decisive moment, Mark, a man well versed in the venerated practices of technology and science, stepped forth upon the pulpit of public discourse. With solemnity gracing his countenance, he declaimed unto the assemblage, "Brethren and sisters, hearken unto the testimony of our modern oracles, the instruments of seismology, whose vigilance spans the abysses beneath our very feet." Mark brandished an electronic tablet, its screen aglow with intricate maps and cascading data. By their unwavering watchfulness, these digital sentinels would register even the most minuscule of perturbations, the faintest tremors provoked by a restless titan. And yet, their reports return to us in a state of tranquil stillness, devoid of the foreboding oscillations one would expect from a stirring leviathan. Then, with gravitas befitting her academic standing, Rachel, a woman of boundless knowledge in geology and the earthly sciences, added her voice unto the conversation. My learned friends and fellow citizens, the human psyche, ever frail in the face of impending catastrophe, seeks sanctuary in the archaic corridors of myth and augury. Brandishing her own array of charts and complex mathematical models, she continued, though ancient prophecies may echo through the corridors of our collective consciousness, they serve as mere sanctuaries for the distressed mind, not as verifiable markers of forthcoming havoc. And finally, Sarah, upon whose shoulders rested the weight of the assembly's attentiveness, unfolded a scroll of parchment, meticulously inscribed with lines of financial data. In a tone of irrefutable clarity, she proclaimed, "Let it also be known unto you all, that Eleanor's utterances bear not just the weight of her convictions but the shadow of fiduciary entanglements." She elaborated, holding the parchment high for all to see, "Eleanor, in her solemn proclamations, consoleth her financial alignments with a corporate consortium. This gathering of worldly merchants doth harbor designs upon the verdant expanse of Meadow Park, aspiring to annex its lands for purposes of gain and avarice." The chamber, thick with the atmosphere of collective reckoning, paused to absorb the import of these revelations. The ensemble of truths, scientific, psychological, and economic, now lay before them, compelling each soul to sift through the diverse strands of evidence, to contemplate their intricate interplay, and to consider what manner of resolution would best serve the commonwealth of their community. In that consequential hour, ensnared Eleanor found herself, bound within the intricate webs of her own fabrications or perhaps the mists of her self-deceit. She attempted to mount a defense, her visage flushed and her voice infused with a tinge of desperation. "I beseech thee, hear my testimony. I was unaware of these clandestine associations that now tarnish my standing." Yet as she spoke, the throng brought forth further evidence, a fusillade of incriminating documents and irrefutable testimonials, unfolded upon the glowing screens of handheld devices and projected onto the large canvas of public scrutiny. Even more bewildering were the wild accusations that arose from various quarters, claims fantastical and disconnected, that served only to underscore the unhinged state of affairs. Her voice, once full of assuredness, trembled as it navigated the thickening air of suspicion and disillusionment. It was a frail vessel caught in a tempest of disapproving glances and murmured indictments. "I knew not of these tangled webs," she protested, her words imbued with the tremor of uncertainty. But her pleas met with naught but the harsh silence of a collective turning away. The people, now unified in their judgment, closed their ears to her protestations. Their countenances, once open and receptive, became as impassible as stone, and their hearts withheld the grace of forgiveness. With solemnity, the assembly rendered its verdict, choosing to sever her from the fabric of their fellowship. Expelled she was, her person and her name cast out from the bosom of the community. She stood alone, a figure rendered insignificant by her own actions or misjudgments, a shadow retreating into the obscurity from whence it had momentarily emerged. And so did the people return to their daily pursuits, their faith more in empirical evidence and communal deliberation fortified, yet also bearing the heavy wisdom that even within the sanctuary of reason and law, the specter of deceit could find quarter. Lo, in an orchestration of cosmic irony, the Titan did indeed awaken, not from the tranquil soils of Meadow Park, as foretold by Eleanor and her ilk, but verily from the bowels of the adjacent township. This was the very land upon which the corporate citadel, that monument to avarice and earthly ambition, was constructed. Verily, as the ground ruptured and shuddered, Gnomogon made its awe-inspiring advent, erupting from the very bosom of the adjacent township, a land desecrated by the insolence of human endeavor. Lo, it was not Meadow Park, the pastoral sanctuary, which it strode for, but the very soil which supported the towering citadel of corporate might, a monument unto mankind's hubris, avarice, and ceaseless ambition. Gnomogon, a grotesque yet majestic blend of groundhog and badger, uncoiled its colossal form as it burst forth, its fur a labyrinthine tapestry whispering secrets known only to the ancient cosmos, its eyes burning with the celestial embers of timeless wisdom. Its claws, mightier than any earthly blade, were honed to cleave through falsehoods as effortlessly as the reaper's scythe separates wheat from chaff. Upon its emergence, the very firmament seemed to buckle under the weight of its sheer existence. Streets, those arterial byways of human commerce and interaction, crumbled like stale bread beneath its fearsome paws. Highways, the sinewy veins that connected the corporate citadel to its outlying vassals, fragmented as though they were but twigs underfoot. Buildings trembled, as if pleading for mercy from an arbiter that knew none. Thus did Gnomogon commence its march of inevitable retribution. With each seismic step, it drew nearer to the towering citadel, that steel and glass monstrosity which stood in brazen defiance of the natural order. The edifice itself seemed to shrink in the face of such monumental judgment, its lofty spires quaking like leaves in a thunderstorm. The very air grew thick with the electricity of impending calamity. As Gnomogon reached the outskirts of the corporate fiefdom, its guttural roar rippled through the atmosphere, a siren call to the primal fears of all sentient beings, an indomitable declaration of natural law over artificial contrivance. Pillars and steel, the skeletal framework upon which the edifice of human arrogance was erected, cried out in pitiful moans as they buckled under the resonating force. Glass, that brittle emblem of human fragility and hubris, shattered into 1,000 shards, each fragment a crystalline tear shed by the very heavens for the folly of mankind. Yea, as the creature loomed over the towering citadel, it raised its gargantuan paws, each claw a vessel of unfathomable power, poised to deliver a blow that would sever the thread of man's ill-conceived dominion. And with a force as ancient as the universe itself, Gnomogon struck, reducing the citadel to naught but rubble and ruin. Walls that once stood as ramparts against the capriciousness of nature now lay shattered, their stones scattered like grains of sand in a cosmic hourglass. Columns, those stalwart supporters of human ambition, now toppled like the fallen titans of old, their ruinous descent heralding the demise of a false empire. The glass spires, once piercing the sky in an act of vainglorious ascendancy, now plummeted earthward, a shower of shattered dreams and broken aspirations. In this singular moment of cataclysmic undoing, the Titan stood triumphant amidst the ruins of a civilization's misplaced grandeur. The corporate citadel, that human-made Titan of steel and glass, lay vanquished, its lofty ambitions crushed under the unyielding weight of cosmic irony. Thus was the illusion of human control laid bare, a sobering testament to the indomitable laws that govern the universe, laws indifferent to the whims and fancies of mere mortals. So it was that Gnomogon, in its dreadful majesty, served as both destroyer and enlightener, its ruinous path a dark gospel that whispered the unsettling truth, that man, for all his ingenuity and might, is but a fleeting shadow on the cosmic canvas, forever subject to the eternal and impartial dictates of the natural world. Then did Gnomogon, that awesome harbinger of cosmic reckoning, turn its gaze upon a pasture wherein bovines grazed, blithely ignorant of the devastation that had so recently unfurled. As if moved by an ancient hunger, both carnal and symbolic, the Titan ambled towards the docile creatures. Its eyes, diminutive orbs in contrast to its monolithic visage, shone with an unsettling glee, gleaming like twin stars in the firmament of primeval night. Each stride it took resonated as an earthly drumbeat, an anthem to the cycles of life and death that govern all flesh. And lo, as it reached the pasture, it lowered its immense jaws, gargantuan caverns that could very well consume the skies themselves, and with an inescapable pull, as if the cows were motes of dust drawn towards a celestial vacuum, Gnomogon devoured them. Their futile protests but muffled cries in the cavernous abyss of its maw, their sacrifices a sumptuous feast to satiate an insatiable appetite. These bovines, though unwitting, had become offerings on the altar of cosmic equilibrium, their lives forfeit in a grander scheme of reparation and appeasement. As Gnomogon chewed, each bite was as the grinding of tectonic plates, each swallow a vortex into which countless epochs of earthly existence seemed to vanish, rendered inconsequential by the implacable forces that dwell beyond the veil of mortal comprehension. Meanwhile, the citadel of human ingenuity and avarice lay in ruin, a testament to the folly of man's overreaching ambitions. There, amidst the rubble, were scattered the vestiges of modernity's hubris, machinery of intricate complexity and digital artifacts, which once hummed and glowed with the false light of man's dominion. These were now but detritus in a maelstrom of shattered glass and twisted alloy, a stark tableau of chaos wrought by the inevitable correction of cosmic balance. Having imparted its visceral sermon and quelled the gnawing pangs of its earthly hunger, Gnomogon commenced its withdrawal. The claws that had reaped a harvest of ruin and enlightenment now engaged in a different labor, digging into the very womb of the earth, as if stitching a gaping wound in the fabric of existence. These instruments of celestial reckoning bore the Titan back into Earth's nurturing bosom, where it sank into the hidden chambers of eternal sleep. Beneath the undulating mantle of soil and stone, the great beast vanished into the labyrinthine depths from whence it had emerged. With its descent, the cosmos itself seemed to exhale a breath it had been holding, an astral sigh of both relief and apprehension. For the celestial cycle, paused momentarily by these astonishing events, resumed its unceasing revolution around the wheel of destiny. And thus were the gears of fate set in motion once again, their intricate interlockings silently preparing for the chapters yet to unfold in the chronicle of existence. The next century awaited its birth, and who could say what portents and wonders would herald its arrival? One thing was certain. The tale of Gnomogon, this dread titan of terrestrial and cosmic domains, had become an indelible ink on the parchment of medieval's history, a story whispered with awe and trepidation for generations yet to come. In the aftermath, medieval arrived at a poignant enlightenment. Though led astray by illusions and deceit, it was through unswerving allegiance to truth that they returned to a state of unity. Their painful odyssey served as an indelible lesson. Had they not been so vulnerable to false prophecy, perhaps the neighboring town could have been spared its calamity. Thus did medieval reclaim its former serenity, yet with the newfound wisdom that only truth could shield them against both phantasms of the mind and the harsh realities that lurk in the shadows of existence.